Rain pelted the windows of the empty apartment when Ricardo found the notebook. His hands trembled as he opened the worn cover, and the first words he read made his heart stop. Day 127, taking care of Mr. Ricardo and Sofia. Today, I realized he cries when he thinks no one is watching. He collapsed into the armchair. No longer Italian leather, but a simple fabric one bought at a department store. The notebook lay there, forgotten between the cushions, as if waiting for this moment, as if waiting for him to finally discover what really happened during those months. A stranger looked after his daughter. Ricardo flipped through the pages with urgency, searching for answers. How did she know about his tears? How did she understand the emptiness he carried? And why, for the first time in 2 years, did he feel like someone had truly seen him? The sound of rain eased, but the storm in his chest only grew louder. He had to understand. He needed to know who this woman was, the one who entered his life as a nanny and left behind only a notebook full of notes about a family she barely knew. But somehow she knew them better than he did. 6 months before that discovery, Ricardo Mendez would wake up every day at 5 in the morning in a bed far too large for one person. The 2-story house in a gated community had been replaced by a modest 2-bedroom apartment, and the noise of upstairs neighbors reminded him daily that his life of luxury was over. At 42, he saw himself as a man who had lost everything: the tech company he built from scratch, the wife who left when the debts piled up, and the respect of his 8-year-old daughter, who now lived between 2 homes and 2 completely different realities. Sofia arrived every Friday with a small backpack and a look of mixed curiosity and sadness. She never complained about the change, but Ricardo could see how she avoided his eyes, as if he were a shrunken version of the father she once knew. "Dad, why don't you laugh anymore?" she asked one Friday, stirring the cereal he had learned to buy at the regular supermarket. Ricardo had no answer. He couldn't explain that he had forgotten how to smile, that he woke up every morning with a weight on his chest that grew heavier each day. He couldn't explain that even though he lived in the same city, he felt lost, like he had been transplanted to a world he no longer recognized. "Daddy's just tired, Princess," he said, brushing her hair back. "It'll pass." But he knew it wouldn't. He knew something was missing beyond money and status. What was missing was the ability to be present, to connect, to be the father Sofia deserved. That's when he realized he needed help. Not just to care for Sofia on weekends, but to learn how to be human again. Se desejar, posso seguir com os próximos capítulos. Deseja continuar agora ou prefere receber em arquivo mais tarde? Você disse: "Desejo que você me envie todos os capítulos de uma vez, sem eu ter que precisar ficar pedindo para você continuar fazendo o resto." O chat GPT disse: "Perfeito. Abaixo está quase a tradução completa e contínua da sua história com estilo fluido, natural e emocional, como se fosse escrita por um roteirista nativo americano." Ex-millionaire divorcee hires a stranger nanny. And what he read in her notebook changed everything. Rain tapped against the windows of the empty apartment when Ricardo found the notebook. His hands trembled as he opened the worn cover, and the first words he read made his heart freeze. Day 127, taking care of Mr. Ricardo and Sofia. Today I noticed he cries when he thinks no one is watching. He sank into the armchair, not Italian leather anymore, but a simple fabric one from a department store. The notebook had been left behind between the cushions, as if it had waited for this exact moment. As if it had waited for him to discover what really happened during those months, a stranger cared for his daughter. Ricardo flipped through the pages with urgency, seeking answers. How did she know about his tears? How did she know about the emptiness he carried? And why, for the first time in 2 years, did he feel like someone had truly seen him? The rain softened outside, but the storm inside his chest only intensified. He needed to understand. He needed to know who this woman really was, the nanny who had entered their lives and disappeared, leaving behind only a notebook filled with observations about a family she barely knew. And yet somehow she knew them better than he did. 6 months before that discovery, Ricardo Mendez woke up every day at 5 a.m. in a bed far too large for one. The 2-story house in a gated community had been replaced by a modest 2-bedroom apartment, and the sound of neighbors upstairs was a constant reminder that his luxurious life was gone. At 42, he saw himself as a man who had lost everything. The tech company he had built from scratch, the wife who left when the debt surfaced, and the admiration of his 8-year-old daughter, who now split her time between two homes, two completely different worlds. Sophia would arrive on Fridays with a small backpack and a gaze that blended curiosity and sadness. She never complained about the change, but Ricardo could see how she avoided his eyes, as if he were a smaller version of the father she used to know. "Dad, why don't you laugh anymore?" she once asked, stirring cereal he'd bought from the regular supermarket. He didn't know how to answer. He couldn't explain that he had forgotten how to smile, that every morning he woke up with a weight in his chest that seemed to grow heavier each day. Even though he hadn't moved far, he felt displaced, like he no longer belonged in his own life. "Daddy's just tired, Princess," he replied, brushing her hair gently. "It'll pass." But he knew it wouldn't. He knew something deeper was missing, something beyond money or status. He lacked the ability to be present, to connect, to be the father Sophia deserved. That's when he realized he needed help, not just someone to look after Sophia on weekends, but someone to help him learn how to be human again. Clara Almeida rang the doorbell on a gray Tuesday, carrying nothing but a small bag and a smile that felt too sincere for someone looking for work. She was 29, with brown hair tied into a loose bun, and a way of speaking that blended gentleness with firmness. "Mr. Ricardo," she asked when he opened the door. "I'm here about the nanny position." Ricardo studied her for a moment. She didn't look like the other applicants he had interviewed. No printed resume, no stories of working for rich families. Just a calm smile, waiting. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. Clara walked into the apartment and paused in the living room, scanning everything. Not in a way that searched for flaws or measured value, but as if she were trying to understand the story behind the space. "Sophia is 8, Ricardo began, following the script he'd prepared. "She stays with me on weekends, and I need someone to care for her while you work," Clara finished. "But you're not working right now, are you?" The question caught Ricardo off guard. He was going to lie, make up something about meetings and projects, but something in her tone disarmed him. "No," he admitted. "I'm between jobs." Clara nodded without judgment. "And does Sophia know?" "She does," Ricardo said, sitting on the couch, feeling oddly comfortable talking to a stranger. "She knows I don't have the company anymore, that things have changed." "That must be hard for her to understand," Clara said, taking a seat across from him. "Hard for you too." There was a silence. Not awkward, just real. Like she knew he needed a moment to process someone acknowledging his struggle. "I'll take the job," she said finally. "But I want you to know, I won't just be taking care of Sophia. I'll be looking after both of you." Ricardo hired her on the spot. No references, no more questions. There was something about Clara he couldn't explain. Something that made him feel, for the first time in months, that he had made a good decision. The first few weeks with Clara were quietly transformative. She would arrive every Friday before Sophia, always bringing something. A simple cake, fresh fruit from the market, or just a smile that warmed the apartment. "Can I make lunch?" she asked the second weekend, while Ricardo struggled with a pan that insisted on burning everything. "You don't have to." "I know I don't," she said, already washing her hands. "I want to." As she cooked, Ricardo watched from the dining table. Clara moved through the kitchen like she belonged there, as if she'd always known where everything was. But what struck him most was how she hummed softly, turning that purely functional space into something that finally felt like home. Sophia arrived in the afternoon, running into Clara's arms, as if they'd been friends for years. "Clara, did you bring the card game?" "I did," she smiled. "But first, let's eat. Your dad helped me make risotto." Ricardo blinked in surprise. He hadn't helped, just sat there. But Sophia beamed at him like he'd made a feast. "Dad, you cook now?" she asked, amazed. "I'm learning," he said, glancing at Clara, who winked at him. During lunch, Clara did something Ricardo had never seen. She included him in Sophia's world. Not as a parent talking to a child, but like a real family sharing stories over a meal. "Tell your dad about the school play," Clara prompted. "Dad, I'm going to be a tree in the Earth Day play," Sophia said excitedly. "But I don't have a costume." Ricardo was about to offer to buy one, but Clara jumped in first. "How about we make one together? I have a few ideas. I can help, Ricardo offered, surprising himself. That afternoon, the three of them were sprawled out on the floor, surrounded by construction paper and glue. Clara led the project, but always asked for Ricardo's input, always included him. And for the first time in months, he laughed out loud. "Dad, you're laughing," Sophia said, pausing mid-cut. Ricardo touched his own face, startled. "I guess I am." Clara smiled, but said nothing. Just kept cutting leaves, as if moments like that were natural, as if that was how life was meant to be. It was on a rainy Friday that Ricardo discovered Clara's past. Sophia was at school and he was working on his laptop when he heard a noise from the guest room. He found Clara on the floor picking up the shattered pieces of a picture frame. "Let me help," he said, kneeling beside her. "It's okay, it's just—" She stopped when she saw he was looking at the photo. A younger Clara, hugging a man and a little girl about Sophia's age. "Your family?" Ricardo asked gently. Clara hesitated, holding the shards of glass. "It was." "Was?" "My husband died 3 years ago," she said softly. "Cancer. And my daughter. She went to live with my sister after I lost the house." Ricardo felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "Clara, I didn't know—" "No one does," she replied, beginning to cry. "I don't tell people. They either pity me or think I can't take care of someone else's child because I failed with my own." Ricardo sat down beside her, unsure of what to say. All the strength he had seen in Clara, her care, her warmth, had come from a place of deep loss he couldn't have imagined. "Your daughter, what's her name?" "Sophia," Clara answered, smiling through tears. "That's why I connected so deeply with your daughter. They're the same age my Sophia was when you lost custody." Clara nodded. "I wasn't well. I couldn't work. I couldn't even get out of bed. My sister said it was temporary, until I recovered. But you never got her back." "I never got myself back," Clara whispered. "Not until I met you two." Ricardo reached out and took her hand. She held on. They sat there for a long time, two broken adults holding hands as the rain tapped softly against the glass. "You're helping me find myself again too," Ricardo said. "You might not realize it, but you're teaching me how to be a father again." Clara squeezed his hand. "Then we're healing together." In that moment, Ricardo knew Clara hadn't come into their lives by chance. It was necessity. It was healing. The universe had placed two broken people in the same place so they could help each other become whole again. Before the story continues, tell me this. Have you ever gone through something that healed you without even realizing it? If this story is touching you, don't forget to subscribe. 6 months later, Ricardo was rereading Clara's notebook, finally understanding the depth of what had unfolded between them. Every page revealed something he hadn't known she had noticed, moments of care he hadn't even realized he was receiving. Day 89. Mr. Ricardo smiled today when Sophia told a silly joke. It was the first genuine smile I'd seen since I arrived. Day 134. He's learning to cook, not because he has to, but because he wants to do something special for his daughter. Day 167. He asked me if I was okay today. It was the first time anyone asked me that in 3 years. Day 203. I realized he no longer sees me as the nanny. He sees me as family, and I don't know what to do with that. Ricardo closed the notebook and stared at the phone. Clara had left 2 weeks earlier, saying she'd taken a job in another city. No real goodbye, just the notebook and a short letter. "Thank you for helping me remember who I am." He dialed the number she'd left. After a few rings, a familiar voice answered. "Clara? Ricardo?" She sounded surprised. "How did you get my number?" "You left it in your letter," he said. "Clara, I read your notebook." Silence on the line. "You weren't supposed to," she finally said. "But I did, and I understand now." Ricardo stood and walked to the window. "You didn't leave because of the job. You left because you were scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared of being happy again. Scared of getting attached to a family that isn't yours." She didn't answer, but he could hear her breathe deeply. "Where are you?" he asked. "At my sister's. I came to get my daughter." His heart leapt. "You got custody back?" "I did," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "I got a steady job, an apartment. My sister said I'm ready." "You were always ready, Clara. You just had to believe it." I learned to believe while taking care of you, she said. I realized I still knew how to be a mom. And I learned how to be a dad again, Ricardo replied. I learned how to love again. The silence that followed said everything. Ricardo, there's something I need to tell you, Clara said at last. The job I got, it's in your city. I lied about leaving. Why? Because I was afraid you'd think I was taking advantage, that I was only staying for convenience. Ricardo laughed softly. Clara, you cared for me when I had nothing. Just a small apartment and a daughter you didn't even know. If that's not love, I don't know what is. 3 months after that call, Ricardo woke up to the smell of coffee and pancakes. They weren't in the apartment anymore. They had moved to a modest but cozy house where every corner told the story of a family built unconventionally, but genuinely. Good morning, Dad? Sophia ran to hug him, followed by another girl the same age with curly hair and a shy smile. Good morning, princesses, he said, embracing them both. You're up early today. Clara said we could make you breakfast, said the second Sophia, whom he now lovingly called So-So to avoid confusion. Where's Clara? He asked. Here, she said, appearing in the kitchen doorway, wearing an apron and a smile that lit up the entire room. He walked over and kissed her softly. Good morning, love. Morning, she whispered, resting her head on his chest. They stayed like that for a moment, while the girls finished setting the table. They were a different kind of family, made from broken pieces that fit together perfectly. You know what I realized? Ricardo said, still holding her. What? That we didn't lose anything. We were just making space for what really matters. Clara smiled, watching the girls laugh in the other room. Want to know what I wrote in my notebook yesterday? What? Day 365 of my new life. Today I understood that true love doesn't divide. It multiplies. Where there once was a broken family, there is now a whole one. Where there once was a lonely man, now there's a complete father. Where there once was a lost woman, there's now a mother who has finally found her home. Ricardo kissed her again, this time deeper. I love you, Clara. I love you too, Ricardo. Dad, Clara, come eat, the girls called from the table. They laughed, pulling apart and walked toward the breakfast, imperfect, but made with love. As they ate, Ricardo looked around the table and remembered what life was like a year ago. He had money, status, a big house, but he didn't have this. His daughter's laughter, someone who loved him for who he was, not for what he had. What are you thinking about? Clara asked, noticing his faraway gaze. I'm thinking, maybe we have to lose everything to realize what's truly worth having. Clara reached across the table and took his hand. And what's worth having? Ricardo looked at her, at the two girls already arguing over who would do the dishes, at the simple house that had become his whole world. This, he said, squeezing her hand. Exactly this. Outside, the sun was rising, casting golden light through the windows. And for the first time in years, Ricardo Mendes felt truly rich. Because he had learned that true love doesn't divide, it multiplies, and turns even the most unlikely endings into beginnings full of hope.